In Privacy Watch, Apple says it is closing a security gap in iPhones that allows access to personal information without a password. Apple says the fix will come with the next software update. The change will make it harder to unlock iPhones without authorization, and it will prevent the transfer of data through the phone's charging port after it's been locked for an hour. This method has been used by authorities since the FBI paid a third party in 2016 to unlock an iPhone used by a suspect in a deadly terror attack in San Bernardino, California.
In a statement to the Associated Press, Apple says it's constantly strengthening security to protect data and has, quote, the greatest respect for law enforcement, saying we don't design our security improvements to frustrate their efforts to do their jobs. Joining us on the set to talk more about this latest security update from Apple is senior writer for TechRepublic, Dan Patterson. Good to see you.
Good morning.
So this loophole has been exploited by law enforcement in the past, notably following that terrorist attack in San Bernardino. So how will closing it impact criminal investigations going forward?
This is a really delicate balance between security and the legitimate needs law enforcement have to unlock data or access data. So by shutting this down, it certainly will foil a lot of their efforts, but it's not going to stop them entirely. What this does is there are devices that used to be very expensive that allowed you to connect using the Lightning port on the bottom of the iPhone. That would extract data that was stored in the enclave. This is a secure part of the iPhone that ordinarily is only accessed by you, the user, or the person with the password. So you kind of circumvent not just the password, but the encryption as well. Doing this does allow law enforcement access to the device, but it can also allow other nefarious actors to access the device. And of course, we don't necessarily know that law enforcement always has our best intentions at heart.
In fact, that's what Apple was basically saying, that, this will, there are other countries where law enforcement doesn't need a warrant to go through your phone, and this will at least limit their access to people's phones. But you mentioned not just law enforcement, but hackers too. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So we have issues with how law enforcement behaves in this country, but we do have the rule of law in this country. In other regions, that is not the case. And by allowing access to the device, what you fundamentally do is circumvent encryption. And Apple is saying, and a lot of the people in the InfoSec community are saying that, look, if we don't have encryption, if we can't protect our information, which is really our thoughts, right? This isn't about one piece of data versus another piece of data. It's about privacy of thought. And if we don't have privacy of thought, this was fundamentally structured into our Constitution, then we really can't be able to communicate freely. We can't have ideas develop freely. And if we're constantly under this pressure from law enforcement or from hackers, from other people who may not have our best interests in mind, it undermines our abilities. And if we think about emerging democracies, places who have people who really do fight for freedom, if they cannot communicate freely, then the world is in danger. This is at least Apple's argument.
It's a fascinating discussion, and it's one that I think is also sort of philosophical and ethical in nature, because if you create a technology and you don't provide an antidote to fix that technology, and when I say fix, I mean, for example, if the United States is aware, or any country is aware, that there's a terrorist attack that's imminent, and we know that that information has been shared on these devices, and law enforcement can't get at it because the technology doesn't exist, or because Apple has provided a situation where you cannot even hack it, you can't even use a third party in the way that the FBI did in the wake of San Bernardino, that could be a problem.
That is the delicate balance, and I'm so glad you framed it that way, because we do have to think about our privacy of thought, and that is on a more existential level. But when we look at terrorism, when we look at attacks that may be imminent, look, our law enforcement agents really do have our best interests at heart, or at least in theory they do. So if we can't access information that protects us as a society and protects our physical ability to live, then we're in a really challenging place. And I think that we have to continue having these conversations, because if we don't balance between encryption and security, we'll end up with insecurity in either one of those areas.
So at this point, because you remember after San Bernardino, law enforcement, the FBI put a lot of pressure on Apple to cooperate. They refused, but they also said it's just we can't do it. And eventually they found a third party. Do you foresee these tech companies perhaps altering their policy and maybe working with law enforcement? Or do you think it's just philosophically it's against sort of the foundation of what they do?
Strong encryption is it's something that is defined by math, but it's also something that has become kind of a business marketing tactic used by Apple. Look, if you use Google services, if you use Facebook services, your information is easily harvested, and they kind of trade the security for convenience.
Yeah.
With Apple, they're taking a marketing track and saying, look, this helps us be secure. It also helps our bottom line. I think that what we'll see in the future is a continued debate, and certainly advocates for security will say no, never, no backdoors, and those who work in law enforcement will perpetually say we need a key, we need some way to access these devices. This debate will not stop.
It's just so fascinating to me. I mean, think about it when we talk about in the history of human civilization, specifically in the last 100 and 150 years. I'm thinking about World War II, for example. Espionage is being deployed. You know, the plans for D-Day, we just looked back at the anniversary of D-Day just a couple of days ago. And clearly, organizations, governments knew that people could be broken, people could be hacked, human beings, so that's why you provide them with a cyanide pill. If you're going to get captured, you're going to divulge plans, take that pill, you won't have to. And here, with the advent of technology, it becomes much in the same way, the same discussion that people are having. How do you break technology, individuals, to learn the information that could be crucial to the survival of a people, of a country? And it's just, we don't have the answers just yet.
And that's why we see nation states like Russia, like China, engaging in what we call cognitive hacking. And that is, if I can't access the encrypted information because it's just math, I can't break that. I can break a person.
Yes.
I can trick a person.
I mean, that's what we've been talking about, right?
So
the Facebook fake ads and fake news stories. That's so fascinating.
That's exactly right. These stories aren't necessarily about Facebook or Google or about Apple. They are about information, ideas, and humans, and the way we interact with each other and data.
So fascinating.
Dan Patterson.
Always,
that's a whole other conversation we have to have with you.
Usually at the end of the conversation that we have with Dan, he drops like some kind of like truth bomb on us, and we're like, we need to have him back to talk more about this.
And we will. Thank you so much, Dan.
Great to see you.